Hi, my name is Eva'S, and this is my very first video that I've ever posted to Facebook because for a long time I have wanted to do a rant about Duginism. Nobody even knows what that is, but I'm going to explain it in a bit. But first, I want to tell you who I am. Uh, I'm an American in Berlin. I'm a vocal teacher, retired primarily, and a long-term member of Democrats Abroad, which I'm very proud of, even though I haven't been as active as I used to be in previous years. I am also a proud member of the Blue Dot family that was established by John Bridvo, who I'm a big fan of, and he has inspired me to do this rant because he's just been so passionate in doing so many rants in the last couple of years. I don't remember how long it's been that I've been following, but it's been over a year. And there are not enough women that are doing rants. That's just not right. But I appreciate all the guys that are also doing rants. Richard and Joe and Leo and Randy, and you guys have all gotten me to finally get up and have the courage to say something myself. Um, because I have a pain condition, fibromyalgia, it makes it very difficult for me to be active and in getting around and about and doing lots of things, but I am able to stay at home and keep up with all the news and all the people on Facebook, and I'm a very resourceful person, even if I'm limited in many other ways. So I have been passionate about the subject of fascist and neo-fascist propaganda for many long years, living in Berlin. When I first came here, I couldn't understand for years how in the world the Holocaust could have happened. And so I started learning about the ways in which the propaganda brainwashed people's minds. And it was very, very atrocious what they came to believe in because they were lied to. And now in our day, we are seeing a comeback of the lies getting greater and coming from our own government, from primarily the current administration. And I consider it to be my pet peeve that this has happened and is affecting all of us, especially Americans, but it's also a global phenomenon that is very, very upsetting and driving people crazy. My heroes in being able to be more clarified about what's going on are Malcolm Nance, Luke Harding, Jason Stanley, and Timothy Snyder, who the last two are both Yale professors who've written books. And I've seen Timothy Snyder twice in person here in Berlin, and he has confirmed my beliefs that we are being faced with fascist propaganda tactics, though Timothy Snyder claims it's not even fascism. And we have to be careful that we don't label, the way they label us with all kinds of things, those that are doing these tactics as fascists, because not all of them are. They're doing something completely different. I'll get back to that in a little bit. But first, I want to get to Duginism. And this is coming from a guy named Alexander Dugin. There was an article about him in terms of his beginnings in, uh, as a professor and how he caught the eye of Putin. And it's an Australian news article by Colin Firth that came out on March 4th, 2017. In the article, it explains about the foundations of geopolitics. That's the name of the book that Alexander Dugin wrote. And I want to quote from the article. Perhaps the most amazing part of the book is when it calls for Russia to introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, extremist, racist, and sectarian groups, thus destabilizing internal political processes in the United States. It would also make sense simultaneously to support isolationist tendencies in American politics. And then it goes on to say from Colin Firth, if that reads like an accurate description of Trump's inner circle, again, remember that this text was written 20 years ago, and now it's 22 years ago. That's how long the Russians have been invading the United States with this type of propaganda tactic. It's very important to know about that. Before the election, months before, we started learning a lot about fake news. We knew fake news was being spread all over Facebook, all over the internet. And my favorite website that tracked how this happened was called propornot.com. This was brought to my attention through an article in the Washington Post. And then there was a lot of reaction to it in the internet, and basically a lot of criticism of the site because they were anonymous. They didn't want to say who they were, and I still don't know. I have my suspicions because they stopped posting soon after the con man. That's the word I use the most often for the current president, because I don't like to use his name like everybody else, I know. But they stopped posting in March 2017, and yet the site is still up. I just went to visit it again to make sure it's still up, and it's still really, really interesting to watch how they tracked where this was all coming from. And a lot of it was coming from Zero Hedge. The fake news was coming from zerohedge.com, which was connected to Russia. And they do a list of all kinds of websites and news sites that are from the left and the right in terms of where the fake news was placed. And the fact that they also hit the left as well as the right is something that has been very upsetting to realize, because they just hit everybody, and a lot of it was put together in terms of how they targeted the fake news through Cambridge Analytica. This has basically been documented, well, and it's easiest to see by propernaut.com. Whether or not it's any part of the Mueller investigation, I have no idea. I just hope so, because of people like Malcolm Nance, who knows about this. And the big question is, how was this connected to the current administration or to the campaign before he was elected? I'll tell you one thing, though. Malcolm Nance swears that, or makes the claim, that Stephen Bannon was an avowed Duginist. In addition, Alexander Dugin has been on Alex Jones' InfoWars more than one time, broadcasting. And he wrote, oh no, he didn't write. Alexander Dugin was in Texas, at Texas A&M, on April 29th, 2015. So that's long before this was being spread around with his philosophy to infiltrate us, was known, or it was beginning to be known. He did a talk that's called American Liberalism Must Be Destroyed. So the target for Duginism is not just the minorities. It's not just the Muslims or the Jews or the Mexicans. It's about liberalism as a whole. And basically, it's also global. How many people know about this? I don't know. Even this video that he did, that's still online, only had 40,000 views. That's not very many for something that is supposedly, running the whole world with this propaganda, because it's not Dugin himself. It's what they decided to use as a strategy. Putin has also distanced himself in the last couple of years from Putin has distanced himself from Alexander Dugin, in part because people are on to this whole phenomenon. Not that many people realize that Bannon was influenced, but we've got Stephen Bannon that's still running around the world. He was in Brazil before the election for Bolsonaro. He was all over Europe with the Marine Le Pen campaign. Marine Le Pen has been in Moscow with Putin, and all of these nationalist movements with these leaders that are they're being promoted by Bannon, and he's excited about it, and he's admitted it. And so all of these connections continue to go on in terms of promoting the strategy that I just mentioned before, to support the extremist, racist, and sectarian groups. They do it through Alex Jones. They do it still through Breitbart. Milo and Pamela Geller take on promoting Islamophobia. Um, and then you've got the Hannity fan club that was, uh, I've read that it's not just Hannity that is promoting this type of propaganda that's going on. The fan club he's got has got Russian trolls in it. It's just unbelievable. And that's the whole point. They're so outrageous and so emboldened, and they're even admitting it in many ways, like Bannon did, um, that, nobody can believe it. Because their strategy is to create a situation where we can't recognize the truth anymore. They put out so much fake news and plan it anywhere because it can be, throughout all of our left sites as well, so that you can't even tell what's true anymore. Basically, though, in terms of the reporting from most mainstream news networks, I consider them to be factual, uh, especially when they have consensus. And um, this situation of them, the constant repeating by the president saying, they're just fake news, they're just fake news. They're the press is the enemy of the people. This is all a situation to get his cult to believe that um, he's the one telling the truth and everybody else is lying. Well, there are a lot of characteristics of fascist propaganda, and I've tried to uh, list them. I've seen uh, I've seen a lot of different places where it's been put out how fascist propaganda works, and I actually need a lot more help to be more concise about it because it's a bit overwhelming. There is a list that was put out by Dr. Cynthia Boaz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name, Boaz, Boaz. And she put this out. She didn't relate it to fascism. She just said propaganda. Um, and she wrote it about Fox News in 2011. This is how long it's been going on. It's been going on longer than that. Of course, you got Google's and you got the way all this worked with Germany, and they say that Goebbels was basing it on other fascist propaganda that existed long before him. So it's not new, but what I'm trying to analyze is which types of characteristics are neo-fascist or new in terms of what they're doing. In the meantime, I'm going to just go back to the tactics that are listed by Dr. Professor at Sonoma State University, where I graduated from, in 2011. So her list included panic mongering, character assassinations, which would be the whole name calling, demonization, mobbing, bullying, projection flipping, rewriting history, scapegoating and blaming of any minority, liberals, conflating violence with power and opposition to violence with weakness, confusion, obfuscation, diversion, distraction. We see all of this on a daily basis from this administration. I even heard on CNN that Giuliani had told one of their resources, and that was the end of it. I didn't hear any more about it after that. But apparently, Giuliani said the president loves obfuscation. He just outright admitted it, just confuse everybody by taking one side here and one side there, and you never can tell where he really is at. Like he's not a classic racist because of the fact that he's got his Ben Carson and Kanye West, and it's so you get to be confused, even though most of the observers I know that are my friends are not confused that he's a racist at all, because he uses liberal blacks at least, or Black Lives Matter, or uh, Muslims. He uses them all the time as scapegoats and demonizes them, and it's just, it is so incredibly difficult. And then he's got his people that they just don't believe it, that he could possibly be racist, um, because they only have their minimalized sources who are promoting propaganda. So it's hard. And one of the reasons I didn't want to get into this whole topic is because it's so overwhelming when you think about it, and think about how international it is, and think about the damage it is doing and has done. And to try and figure out, what are they up to? Well, I'm not totally convinced that they're up to preparing for World War III. I don't know. I'm more convinced that the likelihood or the probability is that they just want their elite club to have more power and more money, and they want to have all the governments to be corrupt so that they can have more power and more money. This is in the areas primarily of fossil fuels. That's obvious. Oil, gas, Um, and then in the health industry, particularly pharmaceuticals, making as many profits as possible. Obviously, the weapons industry, um, and in real estate. Those are the big 4 areas where they want as much corruption as possible and need to have these lies and propaganda worldwide to get away with outrageous profiteering and greed. Not everybody is involved. I'm sure a lot of people have no idea um, that this is so connected to a strategy coming out of Russia. But I am convinced that Manafort sure knows, Bannon sure knows as a Duginist, and I believe they trained the con man in these tactics that they did this years ago before birtherism. And he's the perfect person for branding and conning because that's his character. So now, since this is overwhelming, I have started to try to analyze or figure out what kind of strategy could be used to combat it. And I've been working on this for 2 years, and I haven't even been able to hardly talk about it. I do to my friends, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, well, what can you do? What can you do? And it doesn't go anywhere. Because, yeah, what can you do? So I did set up a site that is closed and private that I haven't been posting on, called The Democratic Strategy from the Grassroots. You have to be invited, so you have to talk to me because I'm afraid of trolls and I don't have time and energy to deal with a lot of stuff. So here's my latest project that I'm trying to do, which is 3 parts. First, I've tried to list the top 10 long-term myths that the conservatives have been spreading about liberals and Democrats. So I'm going to give that to you as fast as I can. Read it down here. They say that liberals and Democrats want to overturn the Second Amendment and take away their guns. That we are weak on national security or law and order, even against law and order. That we are pro-abortion. That we are socialist and or communist or even Nazis. Because, National Socialism, yeah, right. That we are lazy and we don't want to work. That we are unpatriotic. That we are anti-Christian and we don't want to say Merry Christmas. That we only want to spend, spend, spend and run up deficits. That we want to raise taxes on the middle class and the working class. That we support the hoax of global warming, which doesn't exist. Those are 10 that have been out there for a long time. And the second part of my project that I'm having difficulty with, because it's so huge, is what happened with Trumpism and what I call Russo or Russo Trumpaganda. When they worked together to get out the fake news, get it into Fox News, get it into Hannity, and bounce it back and forth between both ways. They just beat off of each other. So my list is not long, but it's much, much longer. You can find it in places like PolitiFact. But it's things like the birtherism, the anti-vax movement, that Sandy Hook didn't happen, which was straight out of Alex Jones. You've got believers in this. That Seth Rich leaked the WikiLeaks emails, that most illegal immigrants are murderers, rapists, gang members, drug dealers, human traffickers invading America, Pizzagate, the Uranium One story, that all Democrats are against border security, and they want open borders and want to abolish ICE. And unfortunately, we played into some of that from the left. And I think in part, those tactics might have gotten us confused, and it's that gray area of where that's coming from. Uh, and of course, we're the ones that are supposed to be behind massive voter fraud when it's them. Haha. Yeah, they're always in this situation where, I mean, it existed in the past where they flip and project onto us what they do. And you know, as Professor Boaz said in 2011, they were already doing it back then. But now it's like, it's like it's coming straight from the White House that we do this and we do that. And now the new one is we we Democrats and liberals support infanticide. Okay, so this is a new level. And this is the difference between the old ways that they did it and the way it came together with Duginism and mainstream Republican politics connected to the White House and the star conman at the top. I'm trying to distinguish between the, you know, the old conservative myths and the lies in his era. And I would like to get this documented and posted somewhere online where people can start to get the full picture of what they've done. But the most important part, and that's how I'm going to try to end this little first rant I've ever done, is what strategy can we use to combat this? Because they have their way of sending their trolls, you know, doing everything that I just mentioned, spreading that all over the place because they know how to be concise and they know how to do things strategically, incrementally, insidiously, and nefariously. And we don't think like that. So we need a strategy that's coming from the grassroots that has to do with getting the facts out, that don't just let those lies and myths sit there. Because Democrats, in many ways, the politicians, they know all of this is going on, but one of the reasons they've been resistant to combat it on a clear, direct way is because they've been concerned it just spreads more the more you mention it. Well, now that it's coming from the top, we can't use that strategy anymore because it's spread to millions of people daily. You know, the less you say about it, the less it'll go around, right? Okay, but now, we just saw how it's going around globally, that it hit New Zealand in the worst way possible. One of the most liberal countries in the world that's thriving and beautiful and kind. That's another reason why I decided to do this today, because I can't take it anymore. I can't sit silent. Okay, so what can we do about it? My hero in terms of strategy is George Lakoff. I believe the book he wrote that I learned about years ago is called Don't Think Like an Elephant. And I heard about his framing tactics and wasn't quite sure what he was talking about. Um, because you have to start thinking out of the box a bit. You can't just react and get outraged. We have to do that, and we have to do that with each other, and we have to do our rants. But in terms of going to the next level, in terms of reaching a strategy that's going to hit the independents, and maybe even some of those suburban women, the Republicans, and who knows. This is why I joined the Blue Dot family, because the Blue Dots are surrounded by these brainwashed people in these red states and red districts. And everybody's arguing it's all designed for us to do that. Well, how can we talk to them? And part of the way to start thinking a little bit differently is like when we're online, is if we build truth sandwiches, that we double down on the facts, that we double down on the truth. That's what George Lakoff has been talking about. For example, you state the truth first, like liberals and Democrats actually support the Second Amendment. Then you might mention, yeah, conservatives claim that we all want to take away guns. But can you name a Democratic politician who has advocated to overturn the Second Amendment? That's just one example. And then there's also another one of their myths that we let's go to the we're all baby killers. Oh boy. Well, fact, true. Democrats and liberals can be pro-choice and actually anti-abortion. I've been anti-abortion all my life, but I've also been pro-choice all my life. I would like to have as few abortions as possible. And of course, now we're in this situation where the White House is trying to say, oh, Democrats support infanticide. We want to not only kill babies in late term abortions, but kill them when they're out of the womb. Well, in fact, my truth sandwich, Democrats and liberals have been a part of bringing the number of abortions to an historic low through education and Planned Parenthood. That's what it was about. Family planning. So that it's not about promoting abortion. It's about learning to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Now, today I discovered something I was surprised about when I was looking up this. I wanted to know what the actual statistics are. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, used to post them. Well, the last one posted was just from 2015, that there were 638,169 abortions in the United States. This is lower than has been for years and years. Historic low. And Planned Parenthood says that these extreme circumstances of late abortions at all are just 1%. That means it's like, 6,000 with these crazy, horrible, horrific medical emergencies. And yet it is a top issue. Kellyanne was just arguing with Chris Cuomo and threw it in. And then it's just like it's a top issue for these 6,000 extreme cases It's a top issue for the White House to spread as propaganda. I'm so glad Media Matters has put out a wonderful article from parents who have had to go through these horrendous, horrendous situations where they had to let their baby go because it was so deformed or partly brain dead. I don't even want to go there anymore. Anyway, I don't have an easy time myself um, being able to figure out how to contrast the truth with their lies. I'm just getting started on my list to try to tackle it, and I need help. So that's one of the main reasons I decided to do this, because I would like to get these kind of lists and these explanations and get this kind of thing out about what's going on here in a way that's concise. People don't have time. They don't have time to listen to a video like this one with me. Maybe some will. I know some of my friends are going to. Even my friends don't have time. So, and then of course, something gets posted and then it gets lost in your feed. It's gone. It's um, something has to be put up there that's more clearly documented, more concise, more professional. Maybe that will end up at some point we're working with Now This or with Occupy Democrats because they got a huge following. And hopefully through some type of presidential candidates or through these congressional committees. I don't know how much is going to come out. That's what I was saying in terms of how, if and how Mueller or Congress, with our Democratic congressional committee leaders, if they're going to touch this particular propaganda thing. But we did see in the last couple of days, at least I saw it on CNN, confrontation about the way the president talks and criticism. It's like we're on to him, but not really. And it's going to, because of cognitive dissonance, it's going to take a long time to get those people who have bought into this propaganda to ever change their minds. I think for poor Germany, it took them quite a while before they recognized what had happened to the Jews. They didn't believe it. They heard what was going on, but they didn't believe it. And thank God we had the Marshall Plan and we had kindness that rebuilt Germany and spread the truth and gave them a system that was based on ours, that they value. We certainly don't value the liberal system anymore that we've been given by our founders. In at least in terms of the the Republican Party doesn't seem to value it anymore. Because if, in fact, what I'm saying, uh, what their agenda is, and excuse me, I have to move around with my back. It's time to quit. It's 45 minutes. So um, I want to finish up with good words. I'm hoping we can reach out in some ways, at least those who know blue dots, um, and recognize you can't argue with them. They're really dug in. But maybe you can question them. Maybe you can ask, do they really believe that you as a person support infanticide? Do they really believe that the president is always telling the truth? Um, just question and don't argue. I mean, you can try to see if you can come up with a truth sandwich, but that's work, and that's the kind of work I need help in doing. So you can message me or just comment, and we'll see what can be developed and whether or not we can find a way to combat Duginism and fascist propaganda. Thank you for listening. I don't know if I'll ever do anything like this again, but thanks.